It's time once again to look into the future and see what 2012 has in store for us. Here I am listing the top 20 most anticipated video games of 2012. This will be a two-part countdown with each covering 10 games. Before we begin, there's one rule that I need to make clear. In order for the game to be allowed into this list, it has to be officially announced. As such, games like the next Assassin's Creed, Battlefield or Call of Duty will not be on this list, even if it is almost certain that a new game in all those series will most likely be released this year. But because they haven't been officially announced, you won't see them on this list. Also, because this video is obviously late, games that were released in January, Soul Calibur 5 and Final Fantasy XIII-2 for example, won't be on the list. Okay, let's get started with numbers 20 through 11. Number 20. Borderlands 2. The sequel to the 2009 surprise hit from Gearbox, Borderlands 2 is set for release sometime in the second half of 2012. The game takes place roughly 5 years after the events of the first game and looks to build on both the story and the gameplay mechanics introduced in the first Borderlands. If Gearbox can build on the success of the first game, Borderlands 2 could very well end up as one of the biggest games of 2012. Number 19. Sly Cooper: Thieves in Time. The first new game in the Sly Raccoon series in 7 years, Sly Cooper: Thieves in Time is the fourth game in the series. It is also the first in it not being developed by Sucker Punch Studios. Instead, the development is being handled by Sanzaru Games, the studio that was responsible for the recent Sly Collection release for the PS3. Thieves in Time is currently set for a 2012 release, but a clear date hasn't been set yet. Number 18. Uncharted: Golden Abyss. The Uncharted series makes the jump to handheld consoles with Golden Abyss after a trilogy of successful games on the PS3. Golden Abyss is a prequel to the other games, taking place sometime before Drake's Fortune. It is set to launch along with Sony's new handheld, the PlayStation Vita, in mid-February. Number 17. Twisted Metal. Twisted Metal is another franchise on this list that makes a return after a long absence. The last new game in the series was released back in 2005, so the series is definitely long overdue for a sequel. The addition of new game modes, including online multiplayer, is certainly welcome, as long as the core gameplay remains as good as in the past. Twisted Metal will be released within the next 4 weeks in both the US and Europe, so we can all look forward to creating chaos and destruction very soon. Number 16. Tekken Tag Tournament 2. Namco finally brings back tag team fighting into its long-running fighting game series. After the original tag tournament was released for the PS2 over 10 years ago, none of the subsequent Tekken games have featured tag team fighting, which for me personally at least was a big disappointment. Tekken has long been my favorite fighting game series, and the addition of the tag team mode makes this one of my most anticipated games of 2012. Number 15. StarCraft II: Heart of the Swarm. The second episode of the StarCraft II trilogy, Heart of the Swarm, is finally getting close to release. Close being a relative term here, as this is Blizzard we're talking about after all. The game doesn't even have a proper release date yet, but from the looks of it, Heart of the Swarm is getting released sometime this year. And if I'd have to venture a guess, I'd say that the summer release is quite possible. Just don't be too shocked if it does get delayed again. Number 14. Ni no Kuni: Wrath of the White Witch. This is a game that might have gone under many people's radars, but it certainly deserves everyone's attention. Developed in collaboration by Level 5 and Studio Ghibli, Ni no Kuni is easily one of the most impressive looking games ever made. Although, considering the people behind the game, that's hardly surprising. These days I quite rarely buy games immediately at release, thanks to my large backlog of games that I still haven't finished, but Ni no Kuni is looking like a day one purchase for me. If you like Japanese RPGs, then keep this one in mind. Number 13. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance has had a very troubled development, as it was even put on hold at one point by Hideo Kojima until Platinum Games took over the development. The game takes place several years after Metal Gear Solid 4 and features Raiden as the main protagonist. Unlike previous Metal Gear games, Rising is purely an action game, which is something that many fans of the series, at least at first, objected to. But I see no problem with it, especially since Platinum Games is developing the game. The reason it isn't any higher is because I see it as a very likely candidate for being delayed until next year. Number 12. Max Payne 3. Here's a game I am still not entirely sure how to feel about. On one hand, I'm excited to see Max Payne make a return on current generation consoles after being gone for many years. But on the other hand, this is the first game in the series not being made by the series' original creator, Remedy Entertainment. Then again, the development is being handled by Rockstar Games, who rarely put out bad games. I suppose we'll see how the game turns out when it's released in May, but right now, it comes in at number 12 on this list. Number 11. Hitman Absolution. Rounding out the first half of the list is another long-awaited sequel, Hitman Absolution. It is the first game in the series since Hitman Blood Money, which was released in 2006, but the long absence was a welcome one in my opinion, as the series had been getting a bit stale by that time, with each sequel simply following the same formula over and over again. Hopefully, Absolution can bring something fresh into the series. That's part 1 of the countdown. Make sure to check part 2 as well when it comes out in a few days.